Hi, Jason Young. Welcome to my basement workshop. I'm working on a desk for a client right now. She wants a stand-up desk out of walnut, and we worked together on a design. I'll show you just quickly what the design looks like. That's the desk I modeled in SketchUp. It's 38 inches tall by about 4 feet long and 24 inches deep, and I'm working on the file drawer between the two legs. The legs are completed. The file drawer is the next step, and what I've decided to do is along this top corner to do a half-blind mitered dovetail. So you can see the miter here, and I'll show you where I'm at right now with the mitered dovetail. I've got the first side done, and you can see the dovetails and pins on the top. The half blind comes from not being able to see the dovetails from the side, and the mitered aspect of it is just keeping the mitering that front pin right there. So from the front you just see the miter. Now I've already done the top board with the dovetails, and I'm in the process of transferring the marks from the tails onto my pin board. And because the wood kind of sat for a little while, I had to clamp these jointed 2x4s onto the assembly so that I could straighten the boards out and have all the dovetails aligned. Once the dovetails are all together, everything will be nice and straight and flat, and it'll look great. So what I do is take my marking knife here and just go along between each pin and mark, between each tail and mark that edge. And then afterwards I'll come back with my dovetail saw and I can show you that. Okay, so I have the board marked with the pins as I just showed you. I'm going to take my marking gauge here, which is set to the thickness of the board, the sideboards, and scribe this line, which you can see I've already done. I'll go over it lightly here just to show you. And then the idea is to take a dovetail saddle square like this, and then just transfer the marks from the top of the board down. So I'm transferring these marks here down along the face of the board so that I can follow it with my saw. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and marked out all of those pins, and you can see here that I've marked out the waist with the yellow pencil. It makes it a little easier to see. And I've outlined each pin that I have to remove in pencil, and extended those lines down here, which gives you a visual clue essentially to guide your saw. Okay, so I'll do a few cuts just to show you how I do it with my Lee Nielsen dovetail saw here, and I just follow along the inside of the pencil line using the edge of my finger as a guide. Just slightly cut it. The key here is I'll start the angle on the top, and then I'll drop down to make that vertical angle, that vertical line, and then that curve will help guide the saw through the cut. Now, what you really don't want to do is cut beyond the baseline. I've got a little scratch there, but that's fine. But I will go down beyond my marking gauge line here, since it's on the inside of the case. I don't worry too much about that. Traditionally, it's something that was done on very early furniture pieces and on very expensive case pieces you'll see in museums and at auctions for millions of dollars on Sotheby's. So it was good enough for those guys, good enough for me. So now I'm ready to remove the material from between the dovetails, essentially the waste between pins, and that represents essentially this material right in here, which I will mark again with a pencil so that I don't get mixed up. And the way I'm going to do that is with a plunge router. I've got my new Bosch 1617 plunge router set up with the dust collection attachment underneath, and that's hooked up to my super fancy boom arm here down to my shop vac, and the boom arm is just tied to a piece of strapping in the ceiling. Not terribly fancy, but it does the trick. So I'll get this set up, I'll fire up the rotor, and I'll remove some material in 1/8 of an inch incremental passes so as not to hog too much material out at once. So you can see what I'm doing here, just taking a little bit of material at once, trying my very best not to touch these pins. I just nicked it there, but that's okay because I'll clean that up with a hand plane after it's done, and I'll drop that in incremental passes. I don't want to touch any of these lines or this baseline back here because you'll see that inside the case. So there's a lot of routing to do here to get all these pins out, and I'll show you that and my method for cleaning out the final waste once I get that all routed. So now that all the dovetail sockets have all been routed, I can start taking away the rest of that material. You can see that I'll actually take my 1/4 inch chisel and just start a little bit at a time removing that material, staying away from the baseline, and just taking a little bit of material at a time. I use a 1/4 inch chisel so I don't have to drive the chisel in too hard with the mallet. I can just kind of nibble away at it. Ultimately, your chisel lasts a little bit longer. And then as I'm close to the baseline, then I can go with a bit wider chisel and go down. Now, one trick you can use is to kind of look sideways like this, and you get a better sense of the squareness of your chisel, or the verticality of your chisel with respect to the board. But frankly, since you're dealing with end grain, you can undercut it a little bit. I just kind of force it, lean it in, undercut that just a little bit, and get a nice square edge. Now, I also, as I adjusted my router depth, I left just the line there from my marking gauge. Now I can come in, put my chisel in that line, and push in. Now hopefully, see the grain, I'm going against the grain a little bit. But again, even if that's undercut a little bit, that's not really a problem. And I'll just come in on an angle all along the slope of the dovetail here. This can be done probably a little bit better with a fishtail chisel, but I don't have one. So I kind of work with a 1/4" chisel as much as I can, kind of get cleaning out those edges. And then when I get right down into the corner, I'll switch to an 1/8" chisel. There's always the fibers right along there where you can see the saw cut from that corner up to that corner. The saw leaves the wood fibers behind, so you can kind of pair those in along the grain. And then I use my 1/8" chisel just to get in there and clean that out. Same on the other side. I'm going to slide chisel in just make sure the bottom is flat. And that's it. I just have to do that about 15 more times, and I'll turn the camera back on when I get to the corner here and show you how to miter that corner. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do the miter. I'm going to take my combo square here, and where my baseline extends up, I have a baseline here from when I cut the dovetail. It extends right to this corner. I'm going to put my blade of my marking knife right in that curve, and then I'm going to bring the combo square right to it, and then I'll scribe the line across here into this little pin I left behind. So that'll be able to take out, and in order to get a very accurate saw cut, I'm just going to take this little wedge of wood out of this corner. Then I'll be able to sit my saw right into that wedge, and just put that back. Just clean that up a little bit, like so. Now this is a 45-degree cut right across the grain, so it really doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned whether this is a rip saw or a Carcase saw. I'm going to use my Dovetail saw because I just feel that it fits the size of the joinery better. That's a reasonable explanation. And I'm going to screw on the saw, follow my baseline to try to get a very accurate cut. And I'm trying not to go beyond my only cut that into there. This can be cut back to that corner. And there we go. Nice and clean. And I'll do the other one the same way, and I'll show you how they fit as we sneak up on that cut. So here is that joint fit together first time right off the saw. and I think it looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. The tiniest little gap right there that I could probably squeeze together with some clamps, and the tails all look pretty good. If you look right down at them, once that's glued together and hand plane flush, that'll look great. The only thing is right here, one little, as I nail that together, a little corner popped off, but I kept that piece and I'll glue that back in later on. So that is the mitered half-blind dovetail along that case joint, and next step is to do full through dovetails across the bottom, because the ends of those tails will be hidden by the leg cross piece. Yeah, thanks for watching.